Yeah, that's part of the problem with new technology. I got caught up in Venice. I walked up, I was doing a presentation there, walked up to the stand with the laptop and only got HDMI on it and things, yeah. At least this time I knew, so I borrowed one. So in the agenda, you would have seen I put /32 routing is what we're going to talk about. And it came from a client that we had that was looking to migrate from a bridge to a routed network. Give you a bit of information about myself. Based in Winters, California. Been around a bit too long. So I remember things like 10 days 2, 10 days 5, and a lot of other protocols that came along and disappeared when they were going to ATM at one stage, the token ring, we're going to beat Ethernet out. Well, that didn't happen. I'm the owner of Winters Broadband, started that as a WISP in 2002. Are many of you WISPs yet? Show of hands. Yep. So I think you have the issues when we come to shows like this. What happens if something goes wrong? Well, I had that last night at around midnight. We got to sleep at 3 this morning. We lost the radio on the tower sector, and then at about 5 a.m. our time here this morning, 5 a.m. in California time, we lost another radio on the same tower. So luckily we got we have contract support people we can call out and took care of it. I teamed up we took the training and consulting part of our WISP business and formed WISP TradeCon together with Anders Arons from Latvia. And so that's what you've seen us doing here. I'm a certified MikroTik trainer and consultant with all of the certifications. What I'm going to cover here is just the /32 routing, so I'm not going to get into any of the other bits that you put in there, such as PPLE and the SPS and that. The scenario we're going to look at is it was an existing network with switch layer 2 backbone for hundreds of CPEs. Well over 500, 40 odd sites, redundant backbone links, dual multi-home Cisco managed routers by carriers, 2 different carriers. The goal was to move to router backbone with SPS and to upgrade the internet, the connections to a gig. It was pretty big network with redundant pods and tremendous number of switches in it. So the one thing with it was switch backbone and all the CPEs were configured as routers. So nothing was bridged into the network, so in that case it was secure. The company had a /22, so all of the CPEs were assigned static IP addresses. And the plan originally started off, what they're looking for was routing the backbone network and subnetting by site location. And the idea was that each of the sites, these are the different sites, the size of the subnets, for example, the greens were /27s, the pinky colored ones are /28s, and go that route where the IP addresses that we're using was IP address 10.10.x, which that was the site number, the number of the site of each site. Or actually, sorry, in this case, we'll get back to site number. There will be about 4, 5, 6, or 7, because that was what they had assigned, and then of course your IP address. The thing with that is you lose a lot of IP addresses when you start doing subnetting. You've got the network, the gateway, and the broadcast addresses. That's one problem. You can handle that. You say, okay, I've lost that. But then you have the problems of when you hit the limit of the number of addresses you have on a site. Now you get the situation gets a lot more complex, and how you handle that. The other thing was the network, a client could see multiple towers. If you wanted to change towers, you effectively have to change the IP address into a different subnet. So what happened was replace the switches with MikroTik routers, configured as bridges. So just the switches went out. 2 60 GSPs where gigabit Ethernet connectivity was required, and power control. So at each of the sites you could power control whatever was attached. The 750 UPs for where you didn't need DD, but you wanted the power control. And we've done a lot of work on redundant power, and if you haven't seen anything on that, look at previous months and the presentations we've given. We did one in Venice on that. And using solar and wind powered systems, we've done a lot of work on that for green sites. So that was done. There was no impact on the service. The routers were put in place. It provided improved management and monitoring just by moving to the MikroTik environment. At the data center, the routers there were replaced with CCRs, 10.6.12 G4Ss. Because moving to GigE, it needed a fiber interface there. The next thing there was the bandwidth control and multiple service levels offered to subscribers. So asymmetric service to residential, asymmetric to business. Net equalizers are handling the bandwidth control there. The cost of upgrading the license on the net equalizers because of the increase in bandwidth was way greater than the cost of 2 CCRs. So it became a lot more cost-effective solution and much easier to handle. So the way it works for the /32 configuration, starting off is the CPEs are configured with an assigned address, and the gateway is the same, and the network is all 255s, so /32. The data center router, the IP address it's given there is the loopback address of the router. The network is the CPE, the address is beginning to the CPE is the /32, and it's on the interface, whichever is the link that's feeding out there. So we change the IP address to /32 and configure the CPEs. One thing we did was add a site comment into the config of the IP address. So when you, on the data center router, so when you export it, you could tell where it was in the show. This then actually switched the whole system over to being a /32 router. The trick behind making it work was to use proxy ARP. Without the proxy ARP, it doesn't work. So then you've actually got these, each individually assigned, the subnets are gone, and you can have much more flexible network. So in the CPE address, this was something you might recognize from the interface for cover radio. Well, we just took out the digit, but so the IP address and the gateway are the same, and the net mask is the 255. In the data center router, what we actually do is the loopback address there is put in the network and the interface that it's going out on, and then proxy ARP is enabled. That's what it takes to switch over to /32 routing. Because the tables get a lot better together, but it's a lot more flexible in doing it. So that's what ended up in us with this effectively what you call bridge network, or because we checked all the MikroTik routers and the bridges, and the key to making that work with just reconfiguring the CPEs was the proxy ARP. Now what happens is that you take the configuration that you have the data center router in here and transfer it to the service router. Remove the configuration from the data center router, and then enable your OSPF routing. Now we've got the /32 routing with OSPF, and we've got all the layer 3 QoS capabilities that we can then configure. So migration tips. And this comes from a lot of the work that we do as consultants in that. You really need to know what you've got before you start trying to make a change. And if you ever want to hire any other consultants, the cheapest way to get any other consultant is to know what you got and have it documented. Because if you don't, and they are going to go through and spend hours going through finding out what you got and working on your network, they're going to charge you for it. So that's the number one thing. Set router identities and loop back addresses and have a documentation scheme there. Upgrade all routers to the same software release. Make sure you've got the time zone set and your SMTP client, and back up your configurations. Always back up. The changes can be provided by scripts. So you can come up with scripts to do the configurations. You don't have to manually go in and do them all. And the one thing with MikroTik that's really great is that, whether they're smallest routers that you have, and we have a client that's got over 300, that's actually managed routers that they provide to customers, to the home customers. Because what it does, it gives them control right back to the premise there. And they get money from it each month. So because the routers all run the same software, you can simulate the changes on some small routers in your workshop and then just upload it to your network and you're ready. And then when you start switching over and turning on the OSPF and moving that to the outer edge of the network, you start from the outer edge and work inwards to the core networks. And of course, once you're finished, once again, back up what you got. It was part of the early hours this morning when we get contractors out and they're on the tower and all the rest in the dark. The configurations on that site are all backed up. They put the radio in, just update the configuration. It takes minutes to get the site back up, which you can diagnose what's wrong. So with the router configurations, if you've got a lot of the management systems you have, you can extract the configuration out of there. So do that. If you got something really simple, and we have people that are using QuickBooks to manage all their system, remember there are fields in there where you can keep track of information such as IP addresses, and you can get the information out into an Excel format, and you can create scripts from that. Mixed up between the backwards forward button and the the other way is configure the data center router as each CP is migrated. Then you can export the IP address information you configured, and then use that site field, which you put in the comment, to filter to create the individual configurations for the different site routers that are out there. So this is just a different approach that we've used for clients, and we thought it might be useful to share it with you. So any questions, we have to answer. Yes, Justin.
How are you doing your route summarization? You're as you convert these people, you're moving those IPs out to their local routes, correct? Right. Then you're advertising that via OSPF. Are you then, when you move it out, are you routing a block out, or how are you summarizing that?
They individual addresses then. Yeah.
So it's a routing table full of a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's a very big routing table then, right? Yeah. That's the disadvantage. But with the filtering, you can find whatever you want in there. Yeah.
You thought about using an IPv6 solution instead of IPv4?
For this, customer, no. But I think that's something in the future when we're take a look at. Yeah.
What management system are you using to grab the configs? Because I mean, we can use Fetch or send it to a server, but I'd like to see what people are using that. I'm not a fan of the Dude as much, but I'm wondering, is there a system that's there that will grab all the configs, for us that I don't know about, and then store, and that I can go back and just pull from it too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the ones that we've seen people working with, there's quite a variation on them. But what's very popular with the MikroTik users is using the Dude because it's free. You get other platforms, but you end up paying a lot. You take something like PLTG, you've got your annual license fees, which is quite expensive. The other option is you can go with a number of packages where people will host it for you, and they provide the management. Those are, the one thing with those is if you've got all your information in something that's off-site, you better also have the documentation documented somewhere on-site, because if you lose contact with that management server that's managing your network, contracted it out to a third party.
I've been playing with a few scripts to actually dump them out to Google Docs,
Mhm.
but I don't know whether I'm really a big fan of, I mean, you know, put all my network stuff there, but or I've also looked at Dropbox, but I was just trying to figure out, is there something that, you know, because there it's free, it's not gonna cost me anything, but I was trying to figure out, is there something that, versus us reinventing the wheel, you know?
Mm. I don't know if you know, one of the places to, if you're a member of Whisper,
Yeah.
but there's a tremendous amount of information on their website in discussion between the various WISPs about the different platforms, the pros and cons, and what's recommended.
Yeah, as a member, you only get 2 emails, and they're already used up out of our group, so it's, the members list is kind of like, I don't know if I can ask the non-technical guy to send an email for me.
Yeah. If you're not a member of WISPA, it's an organization well worth joining for you know what you get out of it. But be prepared to expect 200, 300, 400 emails a day coming in. But there are all those people out there, and you get a problem with something, and you put the email out as a question. You'll find that people all over the country that will very knowledgeable people have come back who straight done the same thing, will give you advice on it. Any other questions? Thank you very much.